Captain Lisa Stone stood on the bridge of her ship, looking at the biggest fleet she had ever seen. Hundreds of alien warships stretched out in front of her. Each one was the size of a city. Their hulls gleamed with energy shields that could stop anything. Weapons that could destroy planets stuck out from their sides like deadly spines. Her own ship looked like a toy next to them. The UES Defiance was the newest and best warship that Earth had ever built. But compared to the alien vessels, it might as well have been made of paper. Lisa knew that any one of those alien ships could turn her vessel into dust in seconds. "Message coming in from the fleet commander," said Communications Officer Paul Davis. He looked young and nervous. This was his first real space battle. "Admiral, Kethamore wants all human ships to move to the back of the formation. Support roll only." Lisa clenched her fists. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison got humanity into the Alliance. 3 months of being treated like children who could not fight. While the real warriors prepared for battle, humans were told to stay safe in the rear. "Captain," called Dr. Elena Rodriguez from her science station. "I have been studying the reports from previous battles with the Void Swarm. The other species are missing something important." "What do you mean?" "The swarm learns from every fight. They change their bodies to become stronger, but they follow patterns when they adapt. There are rules to how they evolve. If we could understand those rules, we might find a weakness." Before Lisa could ask more questions, alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on every wall. The main screen lit up, showing the face of Admiral Kethamore. He was a member of the Dominion species. His 4 eyes burned with intensity and his voice could shake mountains. "All ships prepare for battle," the Admiral announced. "Long-range sensors have detected the Void Swarm approaching. They broke through our outer defenses faster than we expected. This is not a drill. All vessels move to combat positions. Support ships maintain safe distance." Lisa watched as the magnificent alien fleet began to move into battle formation. Their ships hummed with power that could light up entire solar systems. Energy cascaded along their hulls like liquid lightning. Weapons charged with sounds like thunder rolling across space. The human ships stayed far behind as ordered. All 12 of Earth's warships grouped together like scared children hiding behind the adults. Lisa felt shame burn in her chest. Her people had fought wars for thousands of years on their home planet. Now, when the biggest battle in Galactic history was about to begin, they were told to watch from a safe distance. "Captain," Tactical Officer Ryan Brooks called out. His voice was tight with fear. "I am reading massive energy signatures approaching our position. The swarm bioships are enormous. Some of them are as big as moons." Through the main view screen, dark shapes began to appear against the stars. They did not look like normal spaceships. Instead, they resembled living creatures that swam through space. Their hulls pulsed like heartbeats. Tentacles writhed along their sides. They seemed to absorb light itself, making the space around them darker. "Dear God," whispered Paul Davis. "How many of them are there?" Lisa counted at least 50 of the massive bioships in the first wave. Behind them came smaller vessels that still dwarfed most of the alien fleet. The Void Swarm had arrived in force, and even from their distant position, the humans could feel waves of terror coming from their allies. "All ships, this is Admiral Kethamore." The fleet commander's voice crackled over the communication system. "The enemy is larger than our intelligence reports indicated. All vessels engage at maximum range. Do not let them get close to your ships." The battle began with a light show that could be seen from other star systems. The alien fleet opened fire with every weapon they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids shot beams of pure energy at the approaching swarm. Quantum torpedoes that bent space itself exploded against the bioship hulls. Particle accelerators fired streams of matter moving at nearly the speed of light. For a few moments, it looked like the alien fleet might win. Several of the smaller swarm vessels took damage and fell back. Pieces of biomatter drifted through space where the enemy had been hit. Lisa felt hope rising in her chest. Then the swarm began to adapt. "Captain," Elena called out in shock. "The bioships are changing. Their hulls are becoming resistant to the energy weapons. The plasma beams are having less and less effect." Lisa stared in horror as the truth became clear. The Void Swarm was not just tough, they were intelligent. Every time an alien weapon hit them, they learned how to defend against it. Within minutes, their bioarmor became immune to attacks that had worked perfectly at the start of the battle. The alien fleet realized what was happening, but it was too late. Their most powerful weapons began to bounce off the swarm bioships, like raindrops hitting a window. The enemy vessels pressed forward, barely slowed by attacks that should have destroyed them. "The swarm is counter-attacking," Ryan reported. "They are firing some kind of organic plasma weapons." The bioships shot back with weapons that seemed alive, streams of green energy that twisted through space like serpents seeking prey. When they hit the alien shields, they did not just damage them. They seemed to eat through the energy barriers like acid eating through metal. Admiral Kethmore's flagship was the first to fall. The Stellar Sovereign was the pride of the Dominion fleet. Its quantum shields could stop the energy output of a star. Its armor was made from materials that did not exist in nature. It had never been defeated in 100 battles. The swarm bioships destroyed it in 7 minutes. "The flagship is gone," Paul said in disbelief. "The Admiral's ship just broke apart." More alien vessels began to die. The beautiful crystal ships of the Zethari shattered like glass. The armored battle cruisers of the Korthak were consumed by living darkness that ate through their hulls. Ships that had ruled space for centuries were swept away like leaves in a storm. "Captain," Ryan called out, "we are receiving a general retreat order. What remains of the fleet is falling back to the secondary defense line." Lisa watched the proud alien fleet running away from an enemy they could not understand. Of the 300 ships that had started the battle, fewer than 50 were still able to fight. The beings who had laughed at human weakness were now fleeing in terror. "Ma'am," Paul announced, "Commander Morrison is sending a message to all human ships." Jake's face appeared on the screen. He was broadcasting from the evacuation of the council station. Behind him, Lisa could see aliens running in panic. The same creatures who had called humans weak were now abandoning their posts. "All human vessels, this is Morrison," Jake said. His voice was calm despite the chaos around him. "The council is ordering a full evacuation. We are to return to Earth and prepare for final defensive measures." Lisa understood what he really meant. They were going home to die. But as she looked at the data Elena had collected, something began to form in her mind. An idea so simple and so crazy that it might actually work. The swarm adapted to advanced weapons by learning from them. But what if they faced something so primitive that their adaptation systems could not recognize it as a threat? "Elena," Lisa said quietly, "show me everything you learned about how the swarm changes." As the data filled her screen, Lisa began to smile. The aliens had been right about one thing. Humans were weak and primitive compared to the great civilizations of the galaxy. Sometimes that was exactly what you needed to be. The battle was over in less than an hour, and it was the worst defeat in galactic history. Admiral Kethamore's mighty fleet had been destroyed by an enemy that seemed impossible to kill. Captain Lisa Stone watched from her position far behind the battle lines as the greatest military force in the galaxy ran away like frightened children. The Stellar Sovereign had been the first to die, but it was not the last. Ship after ship of the Allied fleet was torn apart by the Void Swarm's living weapons. The Zethari crystal vessels that looked like floating cities made of diamond cracked and shattered under the bioship's assault. The Korthak battlecruisers, with armor thick enough to ram through asteroids, were eaten alive by darkness that flowed like liquid shadow. "Captain," Dr. Elena Rodriguez reported from her science station. Her voice shook as she read the sensor data. "The swarm bioships are adapting to every weapon type in real time. Plasma cannons stop working within minutes. Quantum torpedoes become useless after the first few hits. It is like they learn faster than our allies can fight." "How is that possible?" asked Communications Officer Paul Davis. He looked pale as he watched the retreat on his screens. "The bioships share information instantly," Elena explained. "When one of them encounters a new weapon, the entire swarm learns how to defend against it. Their biological systems rewrite themselves to become immune. No conventional weapon can hurt them for long." Tactical Officer Ryan Brooks looked up from his console with fear in his eyes. "Captain, we are receiving evacuation orders. The surviving ships are falling back to the inner colonies. We are supposed to return to Earth immediately. Lisa stared at the tactical display showing the scattered remains of the once mighty fleet. Of the 300 vessels that had entered battle, fewer than 40 were still functional. Many of those were badly damaged and limping home on emergency power. The aliens who had treated humans like servants were now running for their lives. "Ma'am," Paul announced. "Commander Morrison is broadcasting to all human ships." Jake's face appeared on the main screen. He was speaking from the emergency evacuation of the council station. Behind him, Lisa could see the chaos as alien leaders abandoned their posts. Some were so panicked they were trampling each other in their rush to escape. "All human vessels, this is Morrison," Jake said. His calm voice was a sharp contrast to the panic around him. "The Galactic Council has authorized complete evacuation of the border regions. All ships are to return to their home systems and prepare for final defensive actions." Lisa knew what those words really meant. The Alliance was giving up. They were going home to wait for the Void Swarm to arrive and destroy them. Earth had 6 months, maybe less, before the enemy reached human space. After that, it would be over. But something in Elena's research data had caught Lisa's attention. She studied the information about how the swarm adapted to different weapons. There was a pattern to their evolution that the alien military leaders had missed in their panic. "Elena," Lisa said quietly so the rest of the bridge crew could not hear. "The swarm learns from energy weapons and advanced technology. But what would happen if they faced something completely primitive? Something their adaptation systems were not designed to handle?" Elena's eyes widened as she understood what Lisa was suggesting. "You mean kinetic weapons? Solid projectiles and chemical explosives?" "Captain, those technologies are thousands of years old. No civilized species has used them for centuries." "Exactly," Lisa replied. "The swarm has evolved to fight advanced civilizations. Their bioarmor is designed to absorb energy attacks and adapt to quantum weapons. But what if we hit them with something as simple as a chunk of metal moving really fast?" Elena began running calculations on her computer. Her fingers flew over the controls as she analyzed the bioship hull composition data they had gathered during the battle. After several minutes, she looked up with excitement in her voice. "My God, Captain, you might be right. The swarm's bioarmor is optimized to handle energy-based attacks. It can absorb plasma and deflect particle beams. But solid kinetic rounds moving at high speed would hit them like hammers. Their adaptation systems might not even recognize primitive weapons as a threat." Lisa felt her heart racing as the plan took shape in her mind. It was crazy and desperate, but it might be their only chance. She opened a communication channel to the other human ships that were preparing to retreat with the rest of the fleet. "All human vessels, this is Captain Stone of the Defiance," she broadcast. "I know we have been ordered to fall back to Earth, but I have an alternative proposal. We might be the weakest ships in the galaxy, but that weakness could be exactly what we need to win this war." One by one, the other human captains responded. Captain Mike Turner of the Liberty was the first to answer. "Lisa, what are you thinking? Our ships can barely scratch the paint on those bioships." "That is what everyone believes," Lisa replied. "But Elena has discovered something important. The swarm adapts to advanced weapons, but their systems might be vulnerable to primitive, kinetic attacks. Solid rounds and chemical explosives could punch right through their hulls." Captain Sarah Kim of the Endeavor sounded skeptical. "You want to fight moon-sized bioships with bullets and bombs? Lisa, that sounds like suicide." "It sounds like the only plan that might actually work," Lisa answered. "Every energy weapon in the galaxy has failed against them, but they have never faced old-fashioned kinetic rounds fired from railguns. Their adaptation matrix has no protocols for weapons that primitive." There was silence on the communication channel as the other captains considered her words. These were not reckless fighters, looking for glory. They were experienced military officers who understood the odds they faced. Going up against the Void Swarm with primitive weapons was either brilliant or insane. Captain Ben Walsh of the Ranger was the next to speak. "Even if you are right about their vulnerability, we only have 12 ships. The bioships number in the hundreds. How can we possibly win?" "We do not have to destroy all of them," Lisa explained. We just have to prove that humans are not as helpless as everyone thinks. If we can damage even one bioship with kinetic weapons, it will change everything. The galaxy will know that the swarm can be beaten. And if we are wrong? Asked Captain. Turner Lisa looked out at the stars where Earth waited 3 months away. Her home planet was counting on the Alliance to protect them. But the Alliance was broken and running scared. The only thing standing between humanity and extinction was 12 primitive warships armed with weapons the rest of the galaxy considered ancient. If we are wrong, then we die fighting instead of hiding, Lisa said. Either way, Earth gets the same result. But this way, we go down swinging. One by one, the human captains agreed to her plan. They would make their stand here in deep space, far from any help. 12 ships against an enemy that had just destroyed the greatest fleet in galactic history, armed with nothing but kinetic weapons and the desperate hope that sometimes the oldest solutions were still the best ones. As the alien survivors fled toward the inner systems, the human ships turned to face the approaching void swarm. They were about to discover if being primitive and underestimated was a weakness or the greatest strength they could possibly have. 3 hours later, 12 human ships hung in space like tiny sparks against the cosmic darkness. Behind them, Earth glowed blue and beautiful in the distance, completely unaware that its children were about to attempt the impossible. Ahead of them, the void swarm advanced in terrible majesty with bioships the size of cities that seemed to swallow starlight itself. Captain Lisa Stone stood on the bridge of the Defiance watching her tactical display as the other human captains checked in. One final time, Captain Mike Turner of the Liberty sounded calm despite what they were about to face. Captain Sarah Kim of the Endeavor had loaded every kinetic weapon her ship could carry. Captain Ben Walsh of the Ranger reported that his crew was ready to fight and die if necessary. All of them had volunteered for this mission knowing they would probably never see home again. Their ships were primitive by galactic standards. Their weapons were considered obsolete by every military expert in the Alliance. But they were about to prove that sometimes the old ways worked best precisely because no one expected them anymore. All ships reporting ready, Captain, announced Communications Officer Paul Davis. Kinetic rounds loaded in all railguns, chemical warheads armed and ready, conventional missile tubes prepared for firing. Elena, are you certain about this? Lisa asked her science officer one last time. Dr. Elena Rodriguez nodded with grim determination. The swarm bioships have never encountered primitive kinetic weaponry. Their adaptation matrix includes protocols for every advanced weapon type, but nothing for solid projectiles. In theory, depleted uranium rounds moving at 95% light speed should penetrate their hull matrix without triggering their defensive evolution. In theory, muttered Tactical Officer Ryan Brooks from his station. Sometimes theory is all you have, Lisa replied. She opened communications to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Stone. Remember, we hit them fast and hard with everything we have. No energy weapons at all, or they will adapt too quickly. Just kinetic rounds, chemical explosives, and good old-fashioned human determination. The lead void swarm bioship loomed ahead of them like a living nightmare. It was easily 10 times the size of their largest vessel. Its hull pulsed with organic rhythms that made it look more like a giant heart than a spaceship. Tentacles writhed along its sides, each one bigger than a human destroyer. It had completely ignored the tiny human fleet, treating them as beneath notice, just as their alien allies had done months earlier. Target acquired, Ryan announced. All weapons locked onto the primary bioship. Lisa took a deep breath and gave the order that would either save humanity or doom them all. Fire everything. The Defiance shuddered as its railguns discharged, sending depleted uranium slugs screaming through space at nearly the speed of light. Around her, the other 11 human ships opened fire in a coordinated barrage that would have been laughably primitive to their alien allies just hours before. Chemical warheads that belonged in a museum flew alongside kinetic rounds that had not been used in serious warfare for centuries. The effect on the void swarm was immediate and devastating. The kinetic rounds punched through the bioship's hull like needles through soft tissue. Where energy weapons had been absorbed or deflected, the simple metal slugs tore massive holes in the living armor. Chemical explosives that would barely scratch modern energy shields detonated inside the creature's organs, causing catastrophic internal damage throughout its body. The bioship convulsed in obvious agony. Its tentacles whipped wildly as green fluid that might have been blood sprayed from dozens of wounds. The creature's adaptation protocols activated frantically, trying to understand what was happening to it, but the systems that could evolve defenses against quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons had no idea how to handle chunks of metal fired from magnetic rails. Direct hits across the entire target area, Ryan shouted with excitement. The bioship is venting atmosphere and biological matter. Its hull is taking massive structural damage. The adaptation matrix is trying to respond, but it cannot figure out how to counter kinetic weapons. More swarm bioships turned toward the human fleet, finally recognizing them as a real threat. But they moved slowly, as if confused by an enemy they had never encountered before. Their evolution had prepared them to fight advanced civilizations with energy weapons and exotic technologies. Primitive kinetic attacks were completely outside their experience. All ships continue the attack, Lisa commanded over the fleet communication system. Hit them before they can adapt to what we are doing. The battle that followed would be remembered as the turning point in the war between organic and mechanical life. 12 primitive human ships armed with weapons their allies considered ancient began to systematically destroy bioships that had consumed entire star systems. Each kinetic round found its target. Each chemical explosive caused devastating damage to creatures that had evolved beyond conventional warfare. The lead bioship tried to return fire with its organic plasma weapons, but the humans were ready for that. Their ships scattered in evasive patterns that made them difficult targets while continuing to pour kinetic fire into the swarm vessels. When the bioplasma beams did hit human shields, they caused damage, but nothing like the complete absorption that had defeated the alien fleet. The secondary bioship is breaking apart, reported Paul Davis. Chemical explosions are tearing it apart from the inside. Lisa watched in amazement as Captain Turner's ship Liberty scored a perfect hit with a full spread of kinetic torpedoes. The bioship's hull cracked like an eggshell, spilling its contents into the vacuum of space. The creature that had seemed invincible just hours before was dying from weapons that predated faster than light travel. "Captain," Elena called out, "I am reading panic signals from the swarm bioships. Their communication frequencies are filled with distress calls. They do not understand what is happening to them." For the first time since the void swarm had appeared, the humans were winning. Their primitive weapons were cutting through the enemy like knives through paper. The creatures that had adapted to every advanced weapon in the galaxy had no defense against simple kinetic force applied with deadly precision, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Captain Walsh's ship Ranger took a direct hit from a bioplasma beam that overwhelmed its shields. The vessel broke apart in a ball of flame, taking 60 brave souls with it. Captain Turner's Liberty was badly damaged when a dying bioship exploded, too close to his position. "All ships, this is Turner," came the voice of the Liberty's captain over the communication system. "We have lost main power and life support is failing. But by God, we showed them that humans know how to fight." The battle continued for another hour as the remaining human ships methodically destroyed bioship after bioship. The swarm creatures, that had seemed unstoppable, were falling like dominoes to weapons their adaptation systems could not comprehend. By the end of the engagement, the humans had destroyed or damaged over 20 enemy vessels, using nothing but kinetic rounds and chemical explosives. As the surviving swarm bioships retreated into deep space, Lisa realized that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the weakest member of the Galactic Alliance. They had just proven that sometimes the most primitive approach was also the most effective one. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again. 6 months later, Commander Jake Morrison stood once again before the Galactic Council, but everything had changed. The massive chamber had been rebuilt after the Void Swarm's defeat using new defensive technologies developed by human engineers. Instead of floating platforms, the alien delegates now sat behind kinetic-resistant barriers designed to stop the same primitive weapons that had saved the galaxy. The war was over. After losing their advanced fleets to human tactics, the Void Swarm had retreated to the dark spaces between galaxies. But victory had come at a price that would forever be remembered in human history. Of the 12 ships that made the desperate stand, only 6 had returned home. Captain Mike Turner had died when his ship's life support failed after the battle. Captain Ben Walsh had given his life to prove that courage was not measured by the size of your weapons. Their sacrifice had not only saved Earth, but had completely changed how the galaxy thought about warfare. Every species in the Alliance was now studying human military doctrine. The same beings who had laughed at humanity's weakness were begging to learn their secrets. Jake walked to the center of the chamber wearing the new uniform of the United Earth Fleet. The organization had been created after humanity's unexpected victory to coordinate military training programs across the galaxy. Behind him, Captain Lisa Stone and Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood as representatives of the heroes who had changed everything. "The Council recognizes Commander Morrison of Earth," announced High Counselor Zalith. The ancient being's tone was completely different from their first meeting 6 months earlier. Where once there had been boredom and dismissal, there was now deep respect and genuine interest. Jake stepped forward and looked around the chamber at faces that had once mocked him. Ambassador Vextar of the Dominion leaned forward with all 4 of his eyes focused intently on the human representative. The Zathari delegates who had clicked their mandibles in laughter now sat in respectful silence. Even the massive Korthak warriors looked at Jake with something approaching awe. "Honorable counselors," Jake began. "6 months ago you asked what humanity could bring to this alliance. You looked at our weak bodies and primitive technology and found us lacking. Today I stand before you not to discuss what we lack, but to talk about what we possess that others have forgotten." Ambassador Vextar raised one of his clawed hands. "Commander Morrison, please share your wisdom with us. The Dominion military wishes to understand how your species achieved what our greatest fleets could not." "What we brought to this alliance was not strength in the way you understand it," Jake continued. "We brought a different way of thinking. While your species evolved beyond primitive warfare, humanity never forgot where we came from. We remembered that sometimes the oldest methods work precisely because they are unexpected." A Zathari delegate named Kliktar spoke up. Her crystal body rang like a bell as she moved. "Our military analysts have studied your battle tactics extensively. Your use of kinetic weapons against an energy-adapted enemy was brilliant in its simplicity. We formally request permission to integrate similar systems into our fleet designs." Jake nodded respectfully. "Earth would be honored to share our innovations with our allies, but we offer something more valuable than just new weapons. We offer the perspective of a species that never stopped learning how to fight against impossible odds." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from dozens of different species. Where once there had been dismissive laughter, there was now genuine applause. The beings who had treated humans like janitors now understood that survival often depended on thinking like an underdog. High Counselor Zalith rose from his seat, which was a gesture of the deepest respect in his ancient culture. "Commander Morrison, the Council, formally recognizes Earth as a full member of the Galactic Alliance with all rights and privileges. Furthermore, we request that humanity establish military academies to train officers from all member species." Jake felt pride swell in his chest as he thought of everyone back on Earth who would hear this news. The children who had dreamed of traveling to the stars would now have the chance to teach aliens how to fight. The adults who had worked to build a better future had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. "We accept this honor," Jake replied. "But we do so with the understanding that strength comes in many forms. What saved us was not becoming more like you, but staying true to what made us human in the first place." Later, as the formal ceremonies ended, Lisa Stone joined Jake on the observation deck overlooking the rebuilt council station. Earth hung in the distance, blue and beautiful, and no longer the primitive world that had begged for scraps from the galactic table. Human ships now moved alongside alien vessels as equals rather than servants. "Do you think they really understand what happened?" Lisa asked as they watched joint training exercises taking place in nearby space. Jake smiled as he observed, "Human instructors teaching alien cadets how to use kinetic weapons effectively. I think they understand that evolution is not always about becoming more advanced. Sometimes survival depends on remembering the basics and using them when no one expects it. Our weaknesses became our strengths. Our weaknesses were always our strengths," Jake corrected. "We just had to find the right situation to prove it. They laughed at our primitive weapons until they saw what those weapons could do against an enemy that had adapted to everything else." In the distance, human destroyers escorted alien dreadnoughts on patrol missions along the frontier. The same ships that had been relegated to support roles now served as the backbone of the Alliance fleet. Every vessel in the galaxy now carried kinetic weapons as backup systems in case they encountered an enemy that could adapt to energy-based attacks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez joined them at the viewport, carrying a data pad filled with reports from the outer colonies. The first graduation ceremony from the Earth Military Academy is next week, she announced. We have officers from 23 different species learning human tactical doctrine. What are we teaching them? Jake asked. That being underestimated is sometimes the greatest advantage you can have. That primitive solutions often work better than advanced ones, and that the key to winning impossible battles is to fight them in ways no one expects. Jake nodded as he watched a formation of mixed human and alien ships performing training maneuvers. The aliens were learning to think like humans while the humans were learning to use their primitive nature as a weapon. Together they were becoming something neither could have achieved alone. The void swarm was gone, but there would always be other threats waiting in the darkness between stars. When those enemies came, they would face an alliance that had learned the most important lesson in military history. Never underestimate the species that everyone calls weak. They might just surprise you. Jake Morrison walked into the biggest room he had ever seen. The wall stretched up so high that he could not see the top. Hundreds of strange beings sat on floating platforms around him. Some had scales like reptiles. Others looked like they were made of crystal. A few had tentacles instead of arms. All of them were staring at him. He was the first human to ever stand in this place. The Galactic Council had never seen his kind before. Jake wore his best military uniform, but he felt very small. The aliens around him were giants. Some were twice his height. Others had bodies covered in thick armor that looked like metal. Lieutenant Amy Carter stood beside him. She was the only other human in the room. Her job was to help Jake understand what the aliens were saying. She had studied their languages for years, but she still looked nervous. A tall alien with 4 eyes stepped forward. His name was Ambassador Fextar. His skin was purple and he had sharp teeth that showed when he talked. He looked down at Jake and made a sound that might have been laughing. "So this is what humans look like," Fextar said. His voice was deep and loud. "You are very small. Your skin looks soft. I do not see any natural weapons on your body. What makes you think you can join our alliance?" Other aliens began to make noise. Jake could not understand most of what they were saying, but Amy whispered translations in his ear. They were calling humans weak. They said humans looked like children. Some wondered if humans could even survive in space without help. An alien that looked like a giant lizard slammed his clawed hand on his platform. The sound echoed through the huge room. "I am Ambassador Kor of the Korthak Empire," he roared. "We have ships that can destroy planets. Our warriors can tear through steel with their bare hands. What can your species do?" Jake took a deep breath. He had practiced this speech many times. "We can learn," he said simply. "We can adapt. We do not give up easily." The room filled with sounds that Jake now knew was alien laughter. It came from all directions. Clicks and roars and strange musical notes that meant the same thing. They thought he was funny. A creature made of what looked like living rock spoke next. "Learning is not enough, little human. We face an enemy called the Void Swarm. They have eaten 17 star systems. They consume everything in their path. Your learning will not save you when they arrive." Amy touched Jake's arm gently. She was trying to keep him calm. Jake could feel sweat on his forehead, but he did not show fear. He had been a soldier for 20 years. He had faced danger before. At the center of the room sat the most important alien of all. High Counselor Zalith was older than any living thing Jake had ever seen. His species had ruled space for thousands of years. When he spoke, everyone else became quiet. "The humans may join us," Zalith said. His voice sounded tired and bored. "But only as helpers. They can fix our machines. They can clean our stations. They are not strong enough to fight." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Earth needed this alliance. His planet had just learned how to travel between stars. Without help from these aliens, humans would be alone when the enemy came. "We accept your offer with thanks," Jake said. He gave a small bow like he had been taught. As the meeting ended, aliens began to leave their platforms. Many of them floated past Jake without looking at him. Others stared at him like he was a strange animal in a zoo. A few made comments to each other that Amy did not translate, but Jake could guess what they meant. When most of the aliens were gone, Amy finally spoke. "Sir, I just got a message from Earth Command. Our scouts have found something." "What is it?" "The Void Swarm has been spotted. They are only 3 star systems away from the border worlds." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "How much time do we have?" "Maybe 6 months before they reach populated areas. Maybe less." Jake looked out through a massive window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there an enemy was coming that could destroy everything. The aliens in this room had weapons that could crack moons in half. They had shields that could stop the light from suns. They had fought wars across the galaxy for ages, and they had just told humanity to go clean their bathrooms. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "what are we going to tell Earth?" Jake thought about his home planet. Blue oceans and white clouds, cities full of people who looked up at the night sky and dreamed of traveling to other worlds. Children who played games about space battles. Adults who worked hard every day to build a better future, all of them counting on him to bring back hope. "We tell them the truth," Jake said. "We got into the Alliance. We have a place at the table, even if it is a small one. And we use whatever time we have to learn everything we can. But sir, they want us to be janitors while they fight the war." Jake smiled for the first time since entering the council chamber. "Amy, in my experience, the janitor always knows more about what is really happening than the people in charge do. Let them think we are weak. Let them give us jobs they think are unimportant. We will watch and we will learn. And then we show them what humans can really do." As they walked out of the council chamber, Jake noticed something the aliens had missed. Near the door was a small display showing the layout of their defense fleets, the positions of their ships, the types of weapons they carried. The aliens were so sure that humans were harmless that they did not bother to hide their military secrets. Jake memorized every detail of that display. Back on Earth, there were generals and scientists who would find this information very interesting. The aliens thought they were getting janitors. What they were really getting was the best intelligence-gathering operation humanity had ever run. 6 months to learn how to fight an enemy that had destroyed 17 star systems. 6 months to prove that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest advantage of all. The real war was about to begin.